welcome back. This is Brian Devine. I am the math guy at Hamilton Education. And in this session, we're going to be going through the 393 SAT. So this is going to be the math sections that we're going through. Before we get going, I want to mention one thing. Calculators. Now, you'll be taking this test when you actually take it online, and they do provide a pretty good calculator. So do be aware that there will be a calculator that you can click on, and it's like a Desmos kind of page. In fact, I think it is a Desmos page. But you're allowed to bring along your own calculator. So if you do have a calculator you've been working with, and I highly recommend a graphing calculator like a TI 84 or a TI Inspire or any version of that, or one of the scale Casios, the FX, what is it, 9650 GXI, double I, whatever it is. I don't know. I'm a TI guy. I use an Inspire, but 84 is what the test is built around. That all being said, let's get to the math. Question 1. In question 1, we have k plus 12 equals 336. What is the solution to this given equation? Well, I want to isolate k, so I'm going to take this 12 away from both sides. And I'm going to end up with k then is going to equal 336 minus 12. It'll disappear from the left side because 12 minus 12 is 0, and k plus 0 is k. And if I take 12 away from 336, I get 324, which is the answer. So B is your best choice. Question 2. The function f is defined by f of x equals x cubed plus 15. What is the value of f of 2? Well, I'm sticking 2 in for x, so I'm going to have 2 cubed plus 15. And 2 cubed is 8. So 8 plus 15. And 8 plus 15 is 23. So f of 2 equals 23, which is C. C is your answer. Question 3. John paid a total of $165 for a microscope by first making a down payment of $37 plus P monthly payments of $16 each. Which of the following equations represents this situation? So $165, the total cost is going to be 16 times his monthly payment minus that $37 that he put down, the initial value before he made any payments when P equaled 0. And so that, well, it's sitting right next to the answer, A. Question 4. The table gives the distribution of votes for a new school mascot and grade level for 80 students. So the rows are the mascots and the columns are the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. And we see that if we look down here, that bottom row is the total for all the values in the rows above, and this last column on the right is the totals for all the columns to the left of that. So if one of these students is selected at random, what is the probability of selecting a student whose vote for the new mascot was a lion? Well, let's look at the language here. They tell you one of the students is selected at random, so this would be your out of. And we can see that, well, that'd be 1 out of 80. And so the rest of the thing says, what's the probability that the student selected a lion? Well, that would be the total for all the students that selected a lion. That would be your how many. And if we're going to do a probability, we want to know how many successes, lions in this case, out of. So we would have 20, or how many, over 80. That represents the probability that that one student chose lion. And we reduce that down, that's 1 out of 4. So C is the correct answer. Question 5. In question 5, the graph represents the total charge in dollars by an electrician for X hours of work. The electrician charges a one-time fee plus an hourly rate. What is the best interpretation of the slope of the graph? Well, if X is hours, there's your time. And if you didn't work any hours, that would be your initial fee. So this has to be the one-time fee is where the graph starts. And then the slope of this graph, well, it'd be the charge in money versus the number of hours. So this would be money per hour, which is the electrician's hourly rate. So A is the correct interpretation. Question 6. Square X has a side length of 12 centimeters. Let's draw a square. So there's square X. The perimeter of square Y is 2 times the perimeter of square X, which means we must have doubled every length. And so if the perimeter of square X, well, that's 12 plus 12 plus 12 plus 12. That equals 48. Well, the perimeter of the other square, Y, must be twice that, i.e. the side would be 24, 24, 24, and 24. So the perimeter here is 48. The perimeter here is twice that, 96. And the side, as we already pointed out, is going to be 24. So D is the correct answer. Question 7. In question 7, whoops, let me get my pen going. Question 7, what is the equation of the line that passes through the point 0,5 and is parallel to the graph of y equals 7x plus 4? Well, note that that line is in y equals slope times x plus y intercept. And so the slope has to be the same if we are parallel. So I know that it's going to be y equals 7x. And they told me that the y-intercept was at 5. So 7x plus 5. And the answer I can see is right here in front of me, B. So B is the correct answer. Question 8. The function f of t equals 60,000 times 2 to the exponent t over 410. And this gives the number of bacteria in a population t minutes after the initial observation. How much time in minutes does it take for the number of bacteria in the population to double? Well, that'd be when we multiplied it by 2. And 2 to the t over 410, well, when this exponent is equal to 1, we'll multiply 60,000 by 2 because we'll have 60,000 times 2 to the 1. So if we set t over 410 equal to 1, then t has to be 410, which is your answer. Question 9. The function f is defined by f of x equals the quantity x minus 6 times the quantity x minus 2 times the quantity x plus 6. In the xy plane, the graph of another function, y equals g of x, is the result of translating the graph of f up 4 units. So what's the value of g of 0? Well, g of 0 then should be f of 0 plus 4. Well, that would be if I stuck 0 into x and f up above, I'm going to get negative 6 times negative 2 times 6, and then I add on 4, because all I'm doing is moving the y-intercept up 4, because 0 would be on the y-axis. And so if I look at that, that's going to be 72 plus 4, which equals 76. So g of 0, which equaled f of 0 plus 4, is 76. Question 10. A candle is made of 17 ounces of wax. When the candle is burning, the amount of wax in the candle decreases by 1 ounce every 4 hours. If 6 ounces of wax remain in the candle, for how many hours has it been burning? Well, 17 minus 6 would be 11 ounces burnt. And if I look at that, well, 11 times 4 would be 44 hours. So 44 is your answer. And D is the correct selection. Question 11. In question 11, we're given that 14 times some number j plus 5 times some number k equals some number m. And we're told that this relates the numbers j, k, and m. Which equation correctly expresses k in terms of j and m? Well, if I take 14j away from both sides, I'm going to have 5k would be m minus 14j. And then if I divide both sides by 5, I have m minus 14j over 5. And I look up and see that, well, this is A. So I choose A, and I got it right. I hope you did. Question 12. Triangle FGH is similar to triangle JKL, where F corresponds to J, so FGH, similar JKL, and F corresponds to J, and G and K are right angles. So I could sketch those. That's not too hard to do. I'm going to have FGH, not a pretty sketch, but I never claimed to be Michelangelo nor Botticelli. And then I have another triangle that's similar. I'll make a little bit bigger and just as ugly, but there's a right angle right there, and this corresponds J, K, L. And they told me that they're similar, so J and F, we're told, have the same measure. And sine F, it would be opposite 308 over 317. And we want to know what's the value of sine J. Well, because JKL is similar to FGH, then this has to be 308 times some number, and this has to be 317 times the same number, KL and JL respectively. And so if I look at opposite over adjacent, I'm going to get the same thing as the sine of F. And so the answer would be B. It's the same thing. Question 13. The product of two positive integers is 546. And if the first integer is 11 greater than twice the second integer, what is the smaller of the two integers? Well, let's try this. I'm going to say let m and n be the integers. And so I'll just say that n is equal to 2m plus 11, which means that m is the smaller one because obviously 2m plus 11 is the bigger one. And I want the product. Well, m times n, which we now know is the same as 2m plus 11, has to be 546. And I can rewrite that as 2m squared plus 11m minus 546 would have to be 0. And that's factorable. You can play around with it a little bit. You could graph it and see, but I'd have 2m plus 39, well, however you factor, whatever method is comfortable, times m minus 14 would equal 0. You can FOIL that out if you don't believe me, but that is the factoring. And so m, by the zero product property, would have to be negative 39 over 2, or it would have to be 14. And they said that the integers were positive, and negative 39 over 2 isn't even an integer. So our answer must be 14. And since 14 appears, I'm going to choose 14. And I got it right. I hope you did too. Question 14. We're given two inequalities. It's a system. It says it right here, where y is less than or equal to x plus 7, and y is greater than or equal to negative 2x minus 1. And so I could graph that thing. I don't have to be, super artistic, but if you have a grapher, you can graph this thing. And I would have to have a y-intercept of 7 and a slope of 1. So there's the first line. And then I'd have to have a y-intercept at negative 1 and a slope of negative 2. So there's the second line. And I got to be below the first line, but above the second line, which means that I'm going to be, let me get a highlighter. I'm going to be over, that's not a highlighter. There's a highlighter. I'm going to be over in this area, below the line with positive slope and above the line with negative slope. And if I now look at the 4 points that are given, well, I can see that negative 14, 0 would be way over here. And I can see that 0, negative 14 would be way down here. And 0, 14 would be way up here. And 14, 0 would definitely be in the shade. And so D would be my best answer choice. But I could have also used what's called the Goldilocks method. Is that, or sometimes called plug and chug, is that I just plug these guys in, y and x, see which one works. And I find that the first 3 don't work. And the only one that does is D. But visualizing it actually, I think, is the best way to look at it, because it's going to be within a space, and so the picture tells the story. So D is your correct answer. Question 15. In question 15, we're given an equation that involves 2 radicals. And so the rubric is square both sides. Remove the radicals. So I would have x minus 2 squared, when I square the left, is going to be 3x plus 4. Or 34, pardon me, when I square the right. And I can expand the x minus 2 squared. It's a binomial square, so x squared minus 4x plus 4 has to equal 3x plus 34. And I can get everything over onto one side, x squared. I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides, minus 7x. I'm going to subtract 34 from both sides, minus 30. That would equal 0. And this is factorable. I hope you can see it as easily as I can, that we'd have x plus 3 and x minus 10 in order to get the negative 7x and the negative 30. That's got to equal 0. So x could be negative 3, or x could be 10, or both. And they just said, what's the smallest? And if I look on a number line, well, negative 3 is a lot farther left than 10 would be. So this would be the least value. Question 16. In question 16, we're given some shopping math. The regular price of a shirt at a store is $11.70. The sale price of the shirt is 80% less. Well, that means 20% of, which means we multiply by 0.2. The sale price is 30% greater. Well, that's 130%, which means we're going to multiply something by 1.3. What was the store's cost in dollars for the shirt? So if we take the regular price of $11.70 and we apply the 80% less, we multiply then by 0.2, and we're going to get $2.34. You can put that in your calculator. That's pretty easy to do. So now we know that that is the sale price. And the cost then, we'll call it C, is going to be that, well, we took 130% of the cost and we got the sale price. And so C, in this case, the cost is going to be $2.34 divided by 1.3, which means that their cost was $1.80, which you could enter as 1.8. You don't have a dollar sign, so $1.80 is your answer. Question 17. A sample of oak has a density of 807 kilograms per cubic meter. The sample is in the shape of a cube, where the edge has a length of 0.9 meters. To the nearest whole number, what is the mass in kilograms of this sample? Well, remember that density, D, we'll call it here, is mass per volume. And if we take the volume, which we can find here, well, the volume is going to be 0.9 cubed. And so if we take 0.9 cubed times the density, then we have volume times density will give us mass. And you can put that into a calculator and you'll get something pretty close to 588. So A is the correct answer. Question 18. For x greater than 0, so x is positive, the function f is defined as follows. F of x equals 201% of x. Well, if I wrote that in symbols, I get f of x equals 2.01x, which is linear, and the slope is positive. So it's an increasing linear relationship. And D is your answer. For question 19, we're given a graph, and the question says the rational function f is defined by an equation in the form f of x equals a over x plus b, where a and b are constants. And the partial graph of f of x is shown. And if there's some function g of x that is f of x plus 4, i.e. we just move f of x to the left by 4, which equation would define the function g? Well, I mean, if we have a vertical asymptote here, -4, then we can just shift the graph over. But what if I didn't realize that? Well, I'm going to use a couple of points on the graph. There's two that are evident. I've got -7, -2, and I've got -5, -6. And I'm just going to plug those into the description of f of x. So if I take -7, -2 and plug that in, I'm going to get -2 equals a over -7 plus b. And if I multiply both sides by -7 plus b, I'm going to get 14 minus 2b is equal to a. And if I take the point -5, -6 and do the same thing, I'm going to get -6 equals a over -5 plus b. And if I multiply both sides of that by -5 plus b, then I'm going to have 30 minus 6b equal to a. So this equals a and this equals a. Well, they both equal a. Then I must have that 14 minus 2b would equal 30 minus 6b. And I can solve that for b. I'll add 6b to both sides. I'll subtract 14 from both sides. And I'm going to get 4b equals 16. So b is going to equal 4. And if b equals 4, I can put that in either of the two equations that I found to find a. So I'll put it in the second one. 30 minus 6 times 4 is going to equal a. So now we have b is 4. A is going to be 6. So f of x is equal to a over x plus, pardon me, a is 6 over x plus 4. So then f of x plus 4, I can simply plug x plus 4 in for x, would be 6 over x plus 4 plus 4, which is going to be 6 over x plus 8, which will be g of x. So C is your answer. Number 20. Number 20 just looks ugly, but stay with me here. I want to point out a couple of things right away. The question says, which expression is equivalent to this thing? And I know right away that, well, I can add those together if I have a common denominator. And I note right away that if I look at this denominator right here, I can rewrite that thing as xy times x minus 8. So I take xy over xy and multiply the first term by that. Then I'm going to have xy times y plus 12 over xy times x minus 8. And I can add on to that the y times x minus 8 over what we discovered is xy times x minus 8. Now, I'm going to go ahead and multiply that out. So I'm going to get, well, the first term is going to become xy squared plus 12xy. And then since this is a common denominator, I can just add on the xy minus 8y. And that's all going to be over this common denominator of x squared y minus 8xy. And if I clean that up, I'm going to get, well, I can gather these two guys together. So xy squared plus 13xy minus 8y over that common denominator of x squared y minus 8xy. And I look up and see that, oh, this is C. So C is my answer. Question 21. In question 21, we're given a table of poll results, and the table shows the results of a poll. I just said that. A total of 803, so 803 voters that were selected at random were asked which candidate they would vote for in the upcoming election. And according to the poll, if 6,424 people voted, by how many votes would Cruz be expected to win? So Cruz, well, he's going to have 483 out of 803. And if we take that fraction and multiply it by 6,424, we're going to get 3,864. And if we take Smith away from that, and Smith then is going to be 320 over 803 times 6424. That's going to be 2560. And so I want to take Smith away from Cruz, and I get 1304. So 1304 would be the number of votes that we'd expect from this particular poll Cruz to win by. So B is your answer. Question 22. The graph of x squared plus x plus y squared plus y equals 199 over 2 in the xy plane is a circle. What is the length of the circle's radius? Well, we're going to refer to the general equation for a circle. X minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals radius squared. And so the center is at hk and the radius is r. Well, in order to get it into that form, I've got to do a technique called complete the square. So I'm going to group the x's together. I'm going to group the y terms together. And I'm going to leave the 199 over 2 alone for a moment. So what I want to do here is I want to take these each and turn them into a binomial square. And the trick is that if I'm given something in the form ax squared plus bx, I take half of b and I add it on the end. So I'm going to have b squared over 4 in this general example. But b here is 1. And if I take half of that and square it, I'm going to get 1/4. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to take half of 1 and square it and add that on there. But now that I've added 1/4 to the x's and I got to add them to the other side as well to keep the equation balanced. 1/4 plus 1/4 is 1/2. And if I look at that, that is going to be 200 over 2. So I'm going to have x plus 1/2 squared plus y plus 1/2 squared equals 100, which equals 10 squared. So the radius must be 10. And it's centered at -1/2, -1/2. But we just had to find the radius. It's 10. Section 2 of Module 2. Question 1. Isabel grows potatoes in her garden. This year, she harvested 760 potatoes. She saved 10% of them to plant next year. How many of the harvested potatoes did Isabel save to plant next year? Well, 10% is 0.10, and if I multiply that by 760, I'm just moving the decimal place of 760 one to the left. So that would be 76.0 potatoes. B is your answer. Question 2. What length in centimeters is equivalent to the length of 51 meters? And they say that 1 meter is 100 centimeters. So if I take 51 times 100 centimeters per meter, I get 5,100 centimeters. So 5,100 is your answer. C. Question 3. A bus is traveling at a constant speed along a straight portion of a road. The equation D equals 30t gives the distance in feet from a road marker that the bus will be t seconds after passing the marker. So a bus is tootling along, it passes some marker, and then we go 30 every t. So we know how far will the bus be past the marker 2 seconds? Well, 30 for the first t, 30 for the second t, or D equals 30 times 2, which is 60. So C is your answer. Question 4. In question 4, the given equation relates the variables x and y. For what value of x does the value of y reach its minimum? Well, we see that this is a quadratic in standard form of ax squared plus bx plus c. And the leading coefficient a, here it's 1, is positive, which means it's going to open up. And the minimum value would be at the vertex. And we can find the vertex point is going to be when x equals negative b over 2a from the standard form. So if I look at that, negative b over 2a is the x we want. That's going to be negative 14 over 2 times 1, which would be positive 7. So 7 is your answer. Question 5. Which expression is equivalent to 9x squared plus 5x? Well, those both have an x in them. So I can pull an x, factor an x from both terms, and I'll have 9x plus 5 left over inside the parentheses, which is A. So A is your answer. Question 6. The graphs of the equations in the given system of equations intersect at the point x, y. What is the y value where they intersect? Well, they said x is 8. So you can sub that in here. And y would be 8 squared plus 8. So y is 64 plus 8, which equals 72. Y 72 when x is 8. Question 7. The scatter plot shows the relationship between two variables, x and y, and a line of best fit is shown also. Which of the following equations best represents the line of best fit shown? Well, I'm going to relate it to y equals slope times x plus b, the y-intercept value. And I can see the y-intercept that b must be positive 13.5, which means that C and D are not the equation we want. And I can see that the slope went down as we move to the right, which means that I have to have a negative slope, and I can verify it. It's about negative 0.8. So A is not the answer because B is the only one that has a negative slope and a positive y-intercept. Question 8. A circle has a center O, and points R and S lie on the circle. So I have a circle with a center at O, and I know that R and S are on the circle. And I know if I draw a radius from O to R and a radius from O to S, those are the same length. And so if I look at triangle ORS, it's isosceles. And if they tell me that the angle ROS right here is 88, then These two angles would be the same measure. So if I take 180, the sum of all three angles in a triangle, I take out 88 and I divide it by 2, I should get the measure of both of those angles, which is going to be 46. So both RSO and SRO have the same measure, and it's 46. Section 2, question 9. We're given an equation, and we want to know what is the sum of the solutions to the given equation. Well, let's clean this up a little bit. I'm going to have x squared plus x minus 56, and that's going to equal 4x squared minus 28x. And so if I subtract everything, get everything over onto one side, I'm going to subtract x squared from both sides. I'll have 3x squared. I'm going to subtract x from both sides. I'll have negative 29x. I'm going to add 56 to both sides, so plus 56, and that's going to equal 0. Now, here's a fact. The sum of the solutions for a quadratic, when it's in the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, is going to be negative b over a. Well, if I take negative b over a, then the sum of the solutions for this should be 29 over 3. So 29 over 3, or you could rewrite that as 9.666. Either of those would work. Question 10. Y equals 3x, 2x plus y equals 12. The solution to the given system of equations is xy. What's the value of 5x? Well, if y equals 3x, if I put that in for y, I get 2x plus 3x equals 12, which is 5x equals 12. So 5x equals 12. See. Question 11. A cube has an edge length of 41 inches. What is the volume of the cube? Well, if I take the edge and I quote unquote cube it, I get the volume of the cube with an edge length of 41. And in a calculator, that's D. Question 12. P of t equals 90,000 times 1.06 to the exponent t. The given function, p, models the population of Lowell t years after a census. Which of the following functions best models the population of Lowell m months after a census? Well, a t is in years. So if I look at t in years, that's going to be the number of months divided by 12. 6 months is half a year, 12 months is 1 year. And so I can just replace t here with that, which is exactly what's happened in D, which is your answer. Question 13. We're given another system. The solution to the given system of equations is xy. What is the value of y? Well, we can use a process of elimination here and get rid of x right away. I can multiply the whole first equation by -3. And I'm going to have the first equation, 6x plus 7y equals 28. And the second equation will be -6x minus 6y equals -30. And then if I add those two equations together, the second one's equivalent to the one up above. I eliminate the x, and I'll have y equals -2. Which is the answer. Question 14. The minimum value of x is 12 less than 6 times some other number n. So if I take 6 times n minus 12, then x can't be any less than that. It has to be greater than or equal to that. So all I did was have to translate the words into symbols. And I can see that B would be the correct answer. Question 15. Data set A consists of the heights of 75 buildings and has a mean of 32. So if I take 75 times 32, that's the total of all of those building heights added together. And data set B consists of 50 buildings and has a mean of 62. So if I take all of those 50 buildings and multiply by the mean of 62, that's the total height for all of those buildings in B. And data set C consists of the heights of all 125 buildings. And so if I take the total of A plus the total of B and divide that by the number, 125, 75 plus 50, then I will get the mean of data set C. And I put that into a calculator and I get 44. And so the mean height of all the 125 buildings is 44 meters. Question 16. The graph of 9x minus 10y equals 19 is translated down by 4 units. And I want to know what's the x-coordinate of the x-intercept, which is where y equals 0. And so if I were to graph that line, the first line, I'm going to have a line that, well, I could rewrite that as y equals 9/10 x minus 19 over 10, which is negative 1.9. So I'm going to have a negative y-intercept, negative 1.9, and I'm going to have a slope a little bit less than 1. Now I can find what that x-intercept would be. That's going to be like 2.1 repeating because I can set y equal to 0 in the original equation. But the new equation is translated down. So in effect, what I did is I took y equals 9/10 x minus 19/10, the original line, and I just took 4 away. I moved the y-intercept down 4. So now I have a new line that's parallel, has the same slope. It's got a new y-intercept at, well, negative 5.9, but I want the new x. Well, if I clean this up, I'm going to get y equals 9/10 x minus 59 over 10. And if y equals 0, then in effect, I'm going to have that, well, I need 9/10 x to equal 59 over 10. So x would equal 10/9 times 59 over 10, which is 59 over 9. So the new x-intercept is going to be 59 over 9, which I could also write as 6.555 or 6.556. So any of those were valid answers. But the fraction's just as easy to enter. Question 17. In question 17, 2 variables x and y are related such that for each increase of 1 in the value of x, the value of y increases by a factor of 4. Oh, tricky wording. When x is 0, y is 200. So what they just said here is that we're going up 400% every time x goes up 1. Well, this is exponential. And so when x is 0, y is 200. Well, that's our initial value. And we should then go up by a factor of 4 every time x goes up 1. And so D is our buddy and the correct answer. Tricky wording here. Number 18. Given this quadratic, x squared minus 2x minus 9 equals 0, one solution to the given equation can be written as 1 plus the square root of k. Well, as soon as they show me that, I can do the quadratic formula. If I do the quadratic formula, well, I'm going to take x is going to be negative b over 2a, which will be positive 1 plus or minus rad b squared minus 4ac, which would be 4 plus 36, and that'll be over 2a, which is 2. So x is going to equal 1 plus or minus rad 40 over 2. And I can rewrite that as x equals 1 plus or minus 2 rad 10 over 2. I took the 40, rewrote it as 4 times 10, took the square root of 4, which is 2. Now the 2's cancel. So I have x equals 1 plus or minus rad 10. Well, that must be k, and B is the answer. Question 19. The dot plots represent the distributions of values in data set A and B. Which of the following statements must be true? The median of data set A is equal to the median of B. The standard deviation of A is equal to the standard deviation of B. Okay, so I look at data set A, and I note that it's symmetric about 13. It's the same shape on either side of 13. I look at data set B, and I notice it's the same shape on either side of 13. I can count in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. There's 17. So the ninth one from either end, would be 13. Similarly here, the median here would be 13. So the medians are equal. So 1 is true. Then I note this, that B is more spread out. It's got more stuff on the edges than A does. A is a little bit more compacted towards the middle, which means the standard deviation of B has to be greater than that of A, which means that 2 is not true. So 1 only means that A is the correct answer. Question 20. An isosceles right triangle has a perimeter of 94 plus 94 root 2. What is the length of one leg of this triangle? So if I note the fact that isosceles means that the legs are the same length. In fact, if you look at the geometry reference in the front of every math section on SAT, you have the idea that this relationship of legs to hypotenuse is x to x root 2, where the hypotenuse is the longest length. Well, we can actually rewrite this thing as, if I know the hypotenuse length, then the sides must be x over root 2 and x over root 2. Well, if that's the case, the longest leg must be the hypotenuse, which would be 94. And if I look at half of this, it's 47 root 2. In fact, if I take 94 and divide it by root 2, I get 47 root 2. So each leg is 47 root 2. And note that 47 root 2 squared plus 47 root 2 squared would equal 94 squared. So B is the correct answer. Question 21. In question 21, we're given a quadratic. In the given equation, C is a constant, and the equation has exactly one solution. So we must have then that this quadratic can be rewritten as something times x minus a number squared. It would only have one solution if it was a perfect square binomial. And so if I take that idea, I can complete the square on this thing and put it into that perfect square form. So if I take the equation given, well, I can only complete the square if I divide everything in front of the x squared away. I have to divide everything by -9. So I have a 1 as the coefficient of x squared. So if I divide -9x squared by -9, I get x squared. If I divide 30 by -9, I'm going to have minus 30 over 9x. And then I will have c over -9, makes that minus c over 9. And that's going to equal 0 because 0 divided by -9 would still be 0. And if I take that idea, well, I must have to take half of this and square it, and that's got to be the thing on the end. Let me clean this up a little bit to make it easier to do, because I can write this as 10 over 3x, and that's still going to be c over 9 equals 0. So if I take half of this and square it, i.e. 5/3, and square it, that's got to be the thing on the end in order for me to have a binomial square, i.e. only one solution. So negative c over 9 should equal then 5/3 squared, 25 over 9. Or negative c should be 25. So c must be negative 25, and c is the answer. Number 22. 22 is ugly as sin. All those fractions, it's a system of equations. It has no solution. What's p? Well, if it has no solution, then the lines must be parallel, which means they have the same slope. So I'm going to focus on the fact that p is involved in this slope. Now, I don't like dealing with fractions in these situations, so I'm going to take the whole first equation and I'm going to multiply it by a common denominator, which would be 12. And I'm going to get 18y minus 3x equals 8 minus 18y. And I'm going to get rid of the fractions in the second one by multiplying the whole thing by 2. And I'll have x plus 3 equals 2p times y plus 9. Now, this is an equivalent system as the one given. It just doesn't have all the fractions, but it's the same x's and y's that would solve that one. And I can clean this thing up a little bit. I can rewrite this thing as negative 3x plus 36y equals 8. And x minus 2py would equal 9. So we put it into standard form. But it's easier to see when it's in slope-intercept form, because I can take each of these equations. The first one I can write as y equals 1/12 x plus 2/9. And the second one I can write as y equals 1 over 2p times x minus 9 over 2p. Now, I'm only worried about the slope, so these two have to be equal for the lines to be parallel, which means they'll never intersect. So if 1 over 12 equals 1 over 2p, then 2p must be 12, and p would have to be 6. So p is 6, and you're done with this test. I hope you did well.